Frankie, welcome to Connolly City, welcome to the pod. I'd just like to say a little brief introduction to Frankie Quinn's life before we get into discussing the book, Open Gates, Selected Poetry, which first thing to say is an excellent selection of your poems and a really well produced piece of work. And it's got an introduction to Frankie's life at the beginning of it, just briefly. But I think so as we put the poems into some sort of context, it's important just to outline briefly a summary of Frankie's background and where these poems are coming from. Frankie was originally brought up in Belfast, and then at the outbreak of the conflict in the late 60s, early 70s, his family was thrust right into the middle of that and was eventually forced out of Belfast and forced back to Tyrone, where his parents had come from, at an early age. Frankie's brother was then killed, had initially lied about his age to get into the IRA young, and then was killed at 16 years of age. And Frankie then lied about his age to get into the IRA young, and spent many years living initially in Dublin in quite poor conditions, homeless and various other scrapes in Dublin as a young boy really, and then on the run and on active service along the border for many years before serving terms of imprisonment, first in Portlaoise and then released back on active service, recaptured, and then spending time in Crumlin Road under again quite difficult circumstances in terms of initially being involved in a planned escape which was thwarted, but also which could well have led to you being killed, as it was a setup. And then also Frankie was one of the key people involved in Crumlin Road, which if people can remember back to the battle for segregation between Republican and Loyalist prisoners. So that was literally a bloody battle that people like Frankie were fighting, so it was a really difficult time, and I think you were, if not the longest, one of the longest people in remand in Crumlin Road.
I think it's the longest in general. It was about 2 years on remand. I ended up spending 4 years on remand. And
really difficult, at the time, really
well,
sort of difficult situation.
Under the, at that time it was similar to the No Voice protest. There was shite and piss and everything running down the walls. But the background of that's interesting. The background of that segregation protest was after I came out of Portlaoise prison, where we would have had political status. You would have had your own command structure. You would have marched in military form every Sunday to commemorate volunteers. You would have each night the OC would have fell you out, which meant you never allowed the screws to close the door on you. We always fell out ourselves, turned right, scabagee by the OC, and you closed the door yourself, which took the power away from them for a certain degree. But we would have had token hunger strikes in Portlaoise prison as well under that. But then by the time I got to the Crumlin Road, having been released in '88 from Portlaoise for possession of a 357 Magnum, caught right on the border, and as the Green Book states, our fight wasn't with the Free State forces at that time, so following the letter of what the Green Book in the area would say, I said myself that I put my hands up and says I'm not here to take action against the Free State forces, let me on my way, which was only about 50 yards across the border to carry on the fight against the occupying forces. And they said obviously no. So anyway, and I asked for the gun back in court, and they said no, I'm afraid not. I'm afraid not. So, and funny enough, in court, who you had alive at that time was Sean McBride, and you know Sean McBride, of course, the son of McBride of 1916, and then one of them became the Minister of Defence, was it, in South Africa as well, one of the McBrides. Minister of Policing or something, wasn't it? Yeah. Well, Sean McBride was still there from what me and this man was talking about earlier, from the counter-revolution times, even in the south of Ireland. And he was there to protect the rights of Republicans in the Special Criminal Court. So when we were in the Special Criminal Court, it was a privilege to meet and talk to a man like that. But at that stage he was old and firm and hadn't really a lot to say. He was falling asleep, just like the three puppet judges were falling asleep as well. It was like the system in the north, in the south. It was a matter of 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, whatever it was, just knock Republicans up. But in the prison we had our own education system. I would have went to Portlaoise, I would have been semi-illiterate, like a lot of people coming out of school. And that in itself would have been originally, before we would have left Belfast, like any other family. My school grades would have been C's or average, let's say. And then when we were put out of home by what it was about 200 UDA men marching in a field in front of our house. And each day coming home from school, we'd have to fight with tartan gangs, and each weekend the windows of your house would be put in, and they'd be threatened that they'd kill my older brother, for example, and stuff like that. So this day they were marching. It was one of those strikes in around 71 or 72, one of those UDA strikes, and it was South Belfast UDA. There were about 200 of them. Broke up into companies of about 8 to 10 men, and one of the companies broke out. We were, of course, like field mice crouched in the house, terrified. Two Catholic families left, and they broke off 10 men, marched straight up, smashed the windows with pickaxe handles and masks in it, and gave us 24 hours to get out. And then we moved in cattle trailers. It's like something you'd see in the pure racism, but we were moved in cattle trailers, and while everybody looked on, including the RUC, and we moved back up the Tyrone in the backs of vans and cattle trailers. But then what I'm saying about what noticed then was we got deeply involved in we would have landed the Tyrone nearly seen as hardened characters, because we'd been through the breaking of the ceasefire in Lannadoon, we'd been through the conflict in West Belfast, so to speak, so we were hardened, like, and we got deeply involved as soon as we landed in the Tyrone. But as a result of that, the whole personal education would have completely nearly failed. And then with the brother getting caught by a rifle, going on the run, we'll explain more of that later, and then and getting killed in active service. Paul there before the tell you as well, the Brits would have stopped me going to school and emptied the books out, looking for bits of your brother, you know what I mean, is there a bit of your brother in there, you know, all this. So all that harassment actually arrested me out of the schoolyard several times at 14, 15 years of age. So the education completely failed, and then you just rebelled against it. By the time, I'm just putting this in context of writing, by the time I hit Portlaoise, I would have been nearly illiterate. I couldn't have read a bus sign, for example. I couldn't have read a train station time, and even in what we were involved in, if somebody said to me, look, I need to meet you in Dundalk at 2 o'clock, get the train from Dublin. I'd be standing in Dublin looking at this. But you devise wee plans then, and I'd say to somebody, I haven't got my glasses, can you tell me what time the train's at? Or you'd say to somebody, I can't really read that, will you read that for me? You know, you devise these wee things of being able to handle yourself in a situation where you find yourself totally and utterly embarrassed because you've actually left school and you become illiterate, but as a result of the war, really. So we'll get into that a wee bit more later on. I'm rabbiting a wee bit there.
No, but I mean, I suppose what's interesting is, even by the standards of the conflict or wars anywhere, your life and your family's experience is remarkable, in the sense of the young age that Patsy was when he was killed, and the young age both of you were when you were involved with IRA. It was not unique, but it's remarkable, certainly to us sitting here listening to that, to think of people at 14, 15 involved with that, 16 being killed.
Well,
and that must have had some sort of effect on you as well, in terms of not just the Brits stopping you with your education, but just in terms of you trying to deal with that trauma.
Yeah, well, absolutely, and of course, and as you know yourself, looking around, I know a lot of the heads have been in and out and involved deeply with republicanism their whole lives as much as I have, so by no means are we unique. But the way I always put it was, that there's a journalist called Ronan Bennett who writes for the Guardian newspaper. He's actually an ex-prisoner. He was charged with attempted murder one time, which he beat actually because it was false allegation, but he said one time that these are normal people put in an abnormal situation, and that's very true. And looking around the room here, there's nobody that wouldn't do the same. You know, so there's nothing at all unique about what we became. Now, certainly if you look, we've seen it as normal life, but now when you're sitting talking to people about it and you think about it yourself, you go, Jesus, it was a wee bit extreme. But I think when you're thrown in at that deep end, we wouldn't have knew what sectarianism was or what a Fenian was, and then you'd see a bit in the book where I would have been getting hassled from loyalists when we had been 9, 10, 11, you couldn't really understand it. By the time we ended up moving back to Tyrone, we were politically becoming very politically aware. And I think something that's seen us through as a family even too was that it wasn't based on hatred or anything, or sectarianism, although we faced it. It wasn't based on that at all. It was based on solid politics of the occupying forces of Ireland is the difficulty and the problem, not the Protestant people, or not any other race or any other religion in Ireland. It's the occupation itself. So then all that hardened us and gave us a certain steel to face what we faced then right through, and he just wouldn't give in. Even when burying a brother and all the raids and all the watching your mother squealing and your house being raided, all those things that steal you. But, as Jim's after pointing out, what you find is it hits you like a sledgehammer sometimes. And it can be hard to deal with at times for everybody, and we just talked about it this morning. That PTSD is rampant in Ireland, right across Ireland, and it's cross-generational. And possibly my writing of these poems, and I found a way to express myself, and maybe some people call it self-heal. Heaney talked about healing by writing, or possibly not able to express things, or keeping. Colin Lennon explained it to me one time there as well, actually in the last book launch that I done in Fermanagh. Colin was saying that for years and years we had to be that tough on ourselves and on our emotions. You weren't allowed to break, you weren't allowed to cry, you weren't allowed to deal with emotions, you weren't allowed to talk. You just said, I haven't time for that. We have to win this conflict, we have to win this war, you know. So, and then when it settles down, as I say, it can come like a tsunami, and you have to then find ways of dealing with it. Possibly that's why you end up with books like that. Some of the other people want to art, drawn, or whatever.
And I mean, one of the things that even just when you're explaining it there, I mean, the war literally came to your door. So you've got that personal trauma that you're dealing with in terms of what's happening to the family, in terms of how it's impacting on your family, but also that process of politicisation.
Yeah.
And those two things come out in the poems, I think, where some of them are really personal, and you get a sense into the sort of emotions that you're going through and how you are trying to work through or rethink some of the aspects of your life.
Yeah.
But there's a politics there as well, and that's what keeps coming out through the poems. And were you conscious of that when you were? I mean, because a lot of these poems have been written in jail.
Most of this poetry was written in jail. Some more recent ones haven't been, but I would be very aware and very conscious of the fact that the name on it or the photograph on it becomes irrelevant when you read the content. It's just because I wrote them, but that then by no means unique. It's when I'm giving my view on it. But what I would hope the poems to do, and which I have done a lot of times, have published poems and sent poems to different competitions in different countries, and not put my name on them particularly, or put somebody else's name on them. So the impact is then the poem and not the individual, and that's what I see as important. And I think as revolutionaries and as Republicans, we possibly didn't use the arts enough. We discussed this earlier as well. Have you seen in Vietnam, have you seen in Southeast Asia, right across Central and South America, and other countries where they use the arts to great effect? The tunnels of Koo Chai, in the tunnels, they got their message across through plays, through poetry, through prose, through songs, through operas, done everything in the tunnels, but it really politicised the people. I think it's another way of touching people. So for me, it's just another tactic. No, and it's good to get, of course it's good to get acknowledgement, it's good to get, certainly it's nice for people to say that they enjoyed the poems and the poems mean something to them. And if any person, even from a personal level, an individual, many people come up to me and say, I can really identify with that. Well, that's worth something. So, as a reflection of that then, when they say, well, who wrote it and who wrote this? Irrespective of the person, it's the prisoner and the current Republican. So that's what's important to me, rather than the individual Frankie Quinn. Unlike some of them there, my difficulty with, well, Seamus Heaney, for example, for years and years lived in the middle of the conflict. A first-class writer, wrote some beautiful poetry, but didn't write about Francie Hughes, one of the most courageous and unsung heroes of the Irish Revolution, and didn't write about him and refused to write about him. So sometimes I think even like Yeats, A Terrible Beauty is Born, do they hide sometimes from the situation that they're in? So I think you have to write honestly about the situation that you're in. So if you read Sassoon and Wilfred Owen, the war poets and that, who wrote honestly, and one of them a conscientious objector and then called traitors, you know, but they were still writing honest poems. And so there's a certain honesty in this book as well that I hope people can see, and it's also a personal journey. And when we read some of them and we possibly analyse them, you can see a story in it. So don't be afraid to ask me any questions on it. I'll go straight into maybe reading one and then probably online, but and then we'll get into a wider discussion. And let's discuss anything. Let's discuss current affairs of where we are, or discuss some of the book, or some of my own personal experiences through prison and escapes and all the turmoil that goes through that, because it's interesting to explain that whole segregation element that Jim talked about. Because when I would have hit the Crumlin Road after coming out of Portlaoise and being highly politicised and active, and most of the boys in Portlaoise was Jim Lina, Pete Ryan, most of the boys that we all got out together, I think out of 6 or 8, there's only about 2 left. The rest were killed in Lockall and killed in the Coke ambush, and all returned to active service. So we had ourselves pretty well educated and politically aware and ready to come back out and get deeply involved in the conflict. You wouldn't be out a day. You'd be landing on somebody's door saying, I'm back. People would say, you need to take a rest. You know, you're out of Britain. Say, no, I'm back now, today. You're starting from today, I'm reporting back. So that's just the way it was, and that's what you had to do. So when I hit Crumlin Road, what I couldn't believe was that the screws were calling, shouting numbers, and people were answering to the number. I said, this can't happen. This cannot happen. And there was a lot of new lads coming in, and they were young enough and naive enough, but the screws were breaking them. So I could see actually the strategy was that they were using it as a breaker's yard. He said, if we get them into the Crumlin Road, they're going to go to Longcash, it's a university, they've got political status in it, it will never get, but we can break them here. And that's what they were doing. So we made a decision as a staff, it's not loose talk or anything, as part of the staff, we had a meeting with some of the more senior people as well and said, listen, here's the deal. We're going to go for an escape, first of all, first and foremost. As soon as you hit jail, the first thing you do is say, right, how do we get out? It's the first thing you say, we need to get out of here. It's, as a soldier and a revolutionary, it's your duty to escape from prison, it's as simple as that. So we devised an escape, but the deal was, if this escape doesn't work, this can't continue. We'll have to take the segregation protest to its head and change this whole system, which we knew was going to be hard. So the escape didn't happen because of typically those informers on the outside in Belfast who were supposed to pick us up and get the cars. They had informed the SAS, and there was 4 or 5 teams of SAS squads of about 6 with jimpies and rifles that were waiting on us, come through the wall. So had the escape worked, would have been massacred anyway, because they were waiting on us. But inside we had Semtex, guns, and the detonator failed to go twice on the explosives, it was going to blow the wall down. And there was a bigger bomb on the outside that was supposed to blow the big wall down. So anyway, I ended up getting charged with possession of a revolver and possession of Semtex and attempting to escape from custody. There was 12 of us, a dirty dozen they called us for a while. So that was the escape failed. So then we went into it and said, right, we'll have to now take on the system for segregation. And that was a battle that it needed battle-hardened people to fight, because what they were taking in was ordinary, the best of people coming out of the best of families that you could see coming in, landing in the jail, and you'd know their people and you'd say, those are such gentle people. They've never found themselves in such an ugly, drastic, rotten situation. The rest of us were hardened to it, and there was no problem. Like, so you had to kind of guide these people through, and it was totally unfair because the system would pick on them. Now when we would put ourselves up, we could handle them okay, but that's why they were trying to break us. So we're letting these lads out, maybe one young lad 17 or 18, and then we'd let out 4 loyalists. And the young lad would get half killed, or the screws would. So we had to take action against screws, which we did. Found ourselves charged again with different bits and pieces, but I give the lead from the front. And eventually there was 2 loyalists killed. There was 2 or 3 explosions in the jail. There was guns in the jail. There was rat poison. There was an RPG fired by loyalists at Sea Wing when we were all in Sea Wing. And eventually we had a meeting with we said the UVF and UDA says this isn't working. We're killing each other. And they said, right, we need a meeting to discuss this. And they said, so the screws will bait you every day. They don't mind baiting you. They don't mind baiting Republicans. They'll lock you up every day. And they said, let us try it for a while. And we says, right, fair enough, we'll pull back. They had it within about 6 weeks. The reason being, all the screws lived in the loyalist areas, drank in the loyalist pubs, shopped in loyalist, the wives shopped in shopping centres, and once the loyalists put the pressure on, they just folded. And then that was the segregation broke, and everybody was moved out of the Crumlin Road, and everybody moved along Cash, which in itself helped us as a revolutionary organisation, because you took the power away from the bigoted grinding stone that it was in the Crumlin Road.
I can remember going on visits actually to Crumlin Road at the time when that was all happening, and really the tension and the ugliness was even just on a visit, you could really sense it. And with the families outside and with the sort of wider movement outside as well, it was something that had really got a grip. It's become a really big issue that had to be resolved.
And what you had was the families and the wives, and again the women led the struggle. The women led the struggle in the hunger strikes, the women led the H Block campaign, the women led the Crumlin Road segregation campaign. It was the mammies, like, and the wives and the girlfriends and the sisters. That's who took it to the streets, as always. You know, so that's who was taking the brunt of the pressure. The day before I left Crumlin Road, obviously the UDA and UVF must have done some sort of a pact. So I was on punishment as usual, and all our boys were in the yard, and I was the only one in the wing. So they opened. I thought my door was getting opened a wee bit early. They opened the door, and they let the loyalists into my cell, UDA and UVF. So there was a killing my sir, and stitches and blood and the whole hand. And we got out of it all right, but I was moving to the cash the next day, so they obviously done a deal with the governor to finish this dude before he goes. So got away with that as well. But I mean, it's just another experience.
And again, this is all part of the time where you're in prison, you're involved in these type of head-on struggles leading for the front, and at the same time you're finding poetry and trying to find some sort of way of making sense of what you've been through and the politics that are happening around about you.
Yeah, well, the reason being there is that what they would try and depict you as is these thugs and these people that are anti-heads and these people, whereas you're fighting a segregation. So you come from the outside, being on the run and being involved in the struggle your whole life. So it just continues. Going to prison, you just say, right, this is just another form of struggle, as this is. So when you be writing poetry and bits and pieces, you maybe be trying to make sense of things. So some of the more harder stuff and darker stuff would have come from the Crumlin Road, and then by the time you get the long cash here, and you can see a change in some of the poetry, and then by the time you get out, it has softened and become more inclusive, let's say, of different aspects of life, because you've learned how to live again in life. And in the book there's love poetry, there's nature poetry, there's political poetry, there's when you read it you can see it on yourself.
See, one of the other things that's interesting is you mentioned Heady and Yeats as being sort of poets who in their different ways either didn't want to deal with the conflict or dealt with it in a way which was either sort of quite nationalistic and maybe a bit romantic or whatever. But there's also the tradition of revolutionaries, Republican revolutionaries, writing poetry, sometimes for prison, like yourself or Bobby Sands, and there's a long tradition of that. But that's also something which is international, and we see the same with poets that came out, for instance, the Sandinista Revolution or various other Latin Americans as well. So, and is that something again that when you were in the jail, because there was a lot of political education in the jail as well, and there was that international aspect there, and the arts and culture that was encouraging it. And as you say, that's dealing with some of the stereotypes and negative propaganda that the Brits were putting out about what IRA prisoners were like or what IRA members were like, and you're confronting that by actually embracing some of these other mediums to deal with the politics.
That's right, and that would have a big influence on all of our writing, and Bobby Sands and that as well, of course. And it's changing that narrative that they're peddling, and expressing your revolutionary theory through poetry that people can understand. And again, even though it mightn't necessarily have political content, once then you will know where it's coming from, it automatically becomes political. So the whole book then becomes political. Now if I get a sample of one, then I'll just see which one. Well, this is one, Collins it's called, and again it's about after I think it was out in 1988. After getting released for a few months, I went down and visited that Bale na Blan, and when you study it, me and this man talked about the counter-revolution in the south. Some people call it the Civil War, and people are different, which still lasts today in Ireland. Different families, Fine Gael, Fianna Fáil, Labour movement, all of them came from militant republicanism, like Labour coming from Connolly, like Fianna Fáil, De Valera, Collins with Fine Gael, and so it still exists today. And this is called Columns from Opposite Hills. They have gone and killed Ireland's dream with one foul crack. The same gun used so readily in the purchase of her freedom has torn him from our land. The blood spill runs yet along country lanes where brother has slain brother. A tall man in the shadow with no smile of victory, but a glimpse of pain from his own lost son. In the house of Aaron they weep for another loved one devoured by the beast of war. The country's beauty contorted with each convulsive intake of breath. It exhales another piece of itself in mournful disbelief. They watch from opposite hills. And in that in that you can see the political content in it and the whole tragedy of how war can be manipulated, even after winning freedom and after winning a certain amount of it, where the devious, long-term strategic thinkers of Britain were able to, again, strip us of our freedom, arm one section of the Republican movement against another, hence the result, a counter-revolution, the six-county state and everything that came after it. People can have their own view on Collins. A lot of Republicans have actually come around to thinking slightly differently about Collins now. Maybe Devil Earl was the baddie. Is there certain similarities between Adams and McGuinness with Devil Earl and Collins? Possibly. Some people draw those connections, you know. It was interesting that. Again, there's another aspect of the politics of. Sorry.
Do you draw the same connection?
There is an argument there for it. I would agree. There is an argument there for it that certainly McGuinness seemed to be put front and centre, while the other man was behind being manipulative. The personalities might actually be different, reversed, but a similar idea and a sort of similar concept. And possibly that's the way that they intended doing things, was based on that historical context, where one was prepared to give the other one to Mr. Pierpoint and the hangman's noose to allow the other political party to vote. There's an argument that the hunger strike could have been the same. But another result of the counter-revolution and then further ahead into the 20s was that, again, you had Republicans, and Republicans had to leave the country, as always. And strangely enough, this is possibly the first time we didn't, where Republicans didn't have to actually get up, go right back as far as the wild geese. Go right back to the French, the Australians, the Fenians in Australia, the French Revolution, go back as far as you can. We always had to leave. This time, funny enough, we didn't. Very few people had to leave now. There can be different reasons for that. It's more the decommissioning of a mindset that has happened, rather than leaving and taking your beliefs with you. Because when our people left and took the beliefs with them, they built Republican constituencies right across the world. So it possibly could be a negative thing, and Mr. Connolly is another example of that. It was internationalism right around the world, and learning Italian and having the Italian workers and all that went with that, and that's what we need to be about. That's what we should be about. And which brings us into another aspect of the cruelty of war, and then possibly the cruelty of soldiers finding themselves on the losing end and not knowing what to do next, particularly if they've got left-wing socialist politics. And this one's about Charlie Donnelly. Charlie Donnelly was killed in the Spanish Civil War. He's an Irish Republican revolutionary there's a monument outside Dungannon, and Paul would know it well, there at the Cullen Road. We do a commemoration there every year to Charlie Donnelly, who lived in a house up the back of Tyrone Crystal. What do you call that? Cold Pit Road, is it?
Cold Pit Road.
So this is Charlie Donnelly, Slan. Feel the olives sour and hard underground, where freedom wept beneath the feet of Irish rebels, betrayed by homegrown suits, with buttons stamped by the crown. Two heads, one looking forward, the other back, for people who stood for liberation, shielded by stone ditches, on every other side a gun. Crack! He falls, a muttering slan a cara, between comrades of another tongue. They cradle a rebel who fled from contra-invasion, to fall beneath the orchards of sun-baked land, where dryness insults his throat. He fades away into the evening with eternal nightlark song. Through the exploding clatter of stripped bark scorched by hate, carry back the bodies of fallen soldiers who stood shoulder to shoulder with the international consciousness. They brought together those prepared to free nations, oppressed by all the isms of conservative thought. Plant them beside the oak and drench them with water to grow saplings for future generations who will forever bring them to remember us. Charlie Donnelly. Again, and an influence, Jim, on that would have been one of the, like a Charlie Donnelly's poem, even the olives are bleeding, you know, and even, and I found that when someone, again, the like of the arts and the arty-farty part of, as if working class people can't be involved in the arts. And I remember listening and somebody reading, even the olives are bleeding, and think about that. Even the olives are bleeding in itself, that's some statement. All the olives in Spain bleeding and bleeding the blood of Irish men and the International Brigade right across the world, facing fascism, like facing Franco. That's what adored me into it as well. And the expression from the terminology like that, the massive meaning that it can have and the impact. And again, the statement that we can make from a revolutionary perspective by any of the arts, drama, writing, painting. Again, look at Banksy. Banksy can make one painting that shatters the world, but he's making a massive political statement. And there's a famous one of Banksy's with the wee girl of about 6 up against the wall getting searched by a Brit. Did any of you ever see Banksy's painting of that? It's fantastically. You know, and that's another reason why working class people should not be excluded from the arts, and we should use the arts more and get involved in the arts more. Because once we've been given the opportunity, which this is another example of, although I've been robbed from my education, once I was given the opportunity to educate myself, and by the time we went to Portlaoise, I became a fluent Irish speaker, done my O-levels, done a university course in social science, done a course in issues in deafness, learned sign language as well, learned a certain amount of French and German. So I realised, hold on a minute, people can do this once they're given the chance. So that, and I like that the book hopefully tells that story as well.
See, just before we move on to the next one, there's a few things you're saying there which are interesting. The references to that period after the counter-revolution, with Republicans at the end of a long struggle, being at that point defeated, and many of them choosing to leave Ireland, being forced out of Ireland on many occasions. Some of them choosing to conform, to get involved with the Free State, even if they fought against it. But what strikes me when I read that poem first as well, which I would almost with the use of the term isms, because that's a term that Ernie O'Malley used in his correspondence as well. And of course, Ernie O'Malley was like one of the last, like maybe the last Republican prisoner released after that period, and he chose to leave Ireland to travel a bit, but he came back and settled. But he also was very clear that I'm going to continue my revolutionary Republican politics by other means, by writing, by engaging, and I'm not going to conform. But he also was saying, I'm not going to continue to fight militarily. We've been defeated. That avenue's closed off to me. I've tried that. I'm now going to go into writing, but I am continuing my Republican struggle in that way.
Yeah, so let's not be afraid to face that. And sometimes people were afraid to face facts like that when people like this weren't. And so whenever I would see this as another tactic, and you must look at strategy. You must look at short term, medium term, and long term strategic approaches to trying to achieve your goal. And again, this is nothing moral at all, not based on any morals, because I have no difficulty whatsoever, and have no regrets or no apology to make to anybody for fighting for Irish freedom, and would again with more vigour possibly than I did before, so I'm making no apology for that whatsoever. But tactically, when it ceases to achieve your goal, you have to change, and you have to change tack. And that's what I would see this as well, as continuing that tactic through another way. But what's interesting about what Jim Dr. saying is, like of Ernie O'Malley and others then went further afield to spread the word and then come back. That's not happening this time. And what we find is that there's a lot of people trapped in post-traumatic stress and trapped in the narrative of who won. Because do the victors write history? And do we then write poems and write songs, as always, but yet all remain defeated? So, we have to look at that aspect of it, that this time you've got a nation of people who haven't been defeated, but they're still occupied. So, but we're not allowed to talk about it, because you're a dissident. So, and then there's part of us has conformed and part hasn't. Yet again, the big split has come down the middle, and the enemy, as always, divide and conquer. So again, a massive impact on poetry and writing would have been, of course, Bobby Sands himself. And once I went to the Long Cache, there was one particular screw, that sadistic animal who beat his wife and everything, who just came into work in the morning and loved the possibility of of abusing Republicans. I got 7 strip searches in one day, and I hadn't left a cell. So, you know, if you can't see that as badness, like, and I mind this boy coming in particular, and he'd say too many words in the letter, rip the letter up. But now he wouldn't come in on his own, he'd come in, he would be talking over 6 riot squad people. That's him, but anyway, that continued through solitary confinement for years, because they put us in solitary confinement after the escape for years, and every time we left, even if we did get out of the cell to go to the toilet, well, what happened was you'd come out of the cell to be surrounded by riot squad, all shields and their backs to you, and then move like that when you moved with them. So again, we had to take a decision on that. That's a tough decision to take, because you have to think about the people that you're getting involved in the trouble. Some people maybe not fit for it now. So again, we had to make a decision and say, right, as soon as open the doors, that's it. And that's what you had to do. So we got in and we broke that system as well, because they couldn't handle it. Because here's what I think people possibly, they couldn't understand anyway. Because I remember being naked, surrounded by riot squad after the escape, I had to think. And dogs, Alsatian dogs, and you say, right, what are you going to do? What can you do now? No. Going to kill me? Go. Let's go. They're lost. You can't do anything. Remove the power from them. They bang the door, they beat the door, you laugh. And they do not know what to do. But to quote Bobby Sands, that I'm right. Once you know I'm right. So Bobby Sands always quoted that, I know I'm right. And all through my own imprisonment and interrogation, and the first time I was arrested, I think I was only 14. It should have actually been brought to the European Court. It was totally underage, taken by military. From the bottom of Lisna Hull there, Paul, I think we were putting up flags or something, taken by military police. First of all screened by the British Army and hammered by them, and then handed over to the Special Branch and the RUC, up at the top of the hill, the Castle Hill. Remember the old barracks used to be? Up in there, and held out through the window. Would throw me out through the window down on it. Well, that was at 14.
I've heard that story.
So I said, go ahead, absolutely. I couldn't do it, and I didn't do it, but I didn't speak either. So a 14-year-old boy had to be released by some of the top security people in England because he wouldn't speak.
What stopped you speaking?
Politically, I had it in here. I had it right because I knew I was right. And
But
they were
others
wrong.
did.
Others did. Others did, and I think at that stage we'd been hardened, battle hardened. Is it in the breed of us as a family? I don't know, because none of my family would have been in jail. The older generation would have been similar to this one. They would have been involved in drilling with the IRA, and back in 1916 and right up to the 20s would have been involved in different ways. But so we would have been just normal people, joiners, electricians, plumbers. So what was special about us? Well, you see, the family. Patsy was arrested with a gun at 16 years, at 15 years of age. He was caught with a rifle because he lied to get in, which I was there actually, and was there before that with them as well. And I joined the FEMA, the junior wing of the area at about 12. And then he was arrested that time and caught and didn't break. And
Sorry, so was it your family or was it the cause?
Both, because Paul would know my man. And we'll tell you, and I'll tell you this much.
Strong woman.
See, when we would be going out through the door, when the Brits would be taking you out through the door by the neck, she wouldn't be saying bye-bye, you hungry? She'd be saying, you keep your mouth shut. Aye. And there's different stories about that. So strong people.
Aye.
So when my older brother was arrested then, and he never spoke, and then that set the trend as well. So, and then he was killed in active service, and then I would have been lifted at a very young age as well, and just wouldn't conform and wouldn't speak, and they couldn't do a pile with you. There's not a lot they could do with you when you say you remove the bar from them. And then the sister would have been the same. She would have been arrested, and funny enough, a younger brother right down to Mick. Michael was caught when they were 15.
He was 12 or 13, wasn't he?
They were 14 or 15, maybe 15. They were caught as well, doing intelligence for the IRA, taking numbers of special branch and cops and stuff, and but they were sitting behind a wall right beside the British Army base, and somebody tied on them anyway. But again, he wouldn't speak, and there was other people. The mothers would come in crying, and all my poor wee son, but they let my ma in to see him, but they only got the door open a wee bit. She said, "Keep your mouth shut." So it says, "Get you right." You know, so he didn't say anything either. It's just there's other people that done it too, and I would have absolutely no difficulty in giving them the highest of regard or the highest of respect either. They're only ordinary people. And some people just couldn't take it. The same on the blanket. Some people couldn't take the blanket protest and they had to leave. And that's it. There's people's got different levels of breaking. You know, so I think it's down to your upbringing, being politically aware and knowing in your heart that you're rightly. You know? Well, there's one here, and it's you just can judge it for yourself. It's just the heading on is just voice. He had a voice once. He could shout, and he asked why. But they couldn't answer his question. So they came and took his voice away. They locked it in a bare tomb called H. But a lark carried his voice out over the high walls, and he became an MP. Now his voice is as loud as a million voices, and he died to be free. So you know who that is, and you know what that's all about. And again, being in Longcash, and in Longcash, when you're surrounded in a tin bucket, that's but just in the sterile zone is where larks used to nest. And this constant debate went on. Are they larks or meadow pipits? They'd be saying, don't be English, English shite meadow pipits. They're larks, it's actually the same bird. And so this argument continually was, because the wee meadow, the wee lark will come up, and if you know what a lark does, a lark will come up and he'll flutter about, but she'll sing all the time, she sings constantly. And that's where Sands would have got the lark and the freedom fighter. The lark, so the depiction of that poem, of the lark carrying his voice out over the wall. And that's how he then, and without Bobby Sands' sacrifice and his writings, the middle part of the struggle wouldn't happen. 1981 actually rejuvenated the whole cause for Irish freedom, and I was, you can say it might have been manipulated after that, but however his stance, and don't forget his stance wasn't a stance for Sinn Féin, his stance was for political status within the jail. You know, I'm not saying that Bobby Sands would be against manipulating the system in any way to forward your aim, because I don't think he would. We were all the same. You know, so.
See what's interesting as well, we're having this conversation however long we're talking, we've already mentioned the hunger strike 2 or 3 times, and mentioned Bobby Sands and Francie Hughes, who somebody who you knew well as well. And it just shows you how significant that was to the struggle. And certainly, like I've often described the James Collins Society as being part of that hunger strike generation, because most of us who were involved were young kids at the time, as Irish community in Scotland, living through the hunger strikes and dealing with the way the hunger strike was portrayed here by loyalists or Brits or whatever, and feeling very strongly that we were on the side of the hunger strikers and that the IRA was our army, and then deciding at an age after that to get involved in solidarity work and what have you. And very much when you're reading the poetry, the hunger strike comes through, and it shows the significance of people like Sands and Hughes, but also just the impact that had on those of us part of the diaspora. But obviously for yourself, you were on the run at the time.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that must have been an incredibly powerful period.
We were absolutely powerful, and you had arisen people, as you described yourself, in those years. You were around safe houses, and the real revolution was there, and people were up for it. And in 1981 was a sad time as well. You were losing hunger strikers, but the war was at its height as well, you know. So, and funny thing, when I started that off, I forgot to finish it, was that sadistic screw that I'm talking about. By the time I got to Longcash then, where things are completely different in the political status, he happened to open the door one day. So I happened to drive his trace down his throat, which, as you do, because of the sadistic animal that he was, actually against nearly other people, rather than what he would do as an individual. So I got put in the punishment wing in Longcash. So I was the last person ever on the punishment wing in the cash. But the significance of that was about 3 weeks or 4 weeks on the 6 week maybe in punishment. But they put me in the cell where the boys died in hunger strike, because the punishment wing had been done away with, so they put me in the hospital wing. Wow, some impact. Possibly that's where it came from, I don't know. The impact that had on me, and even the screws that were there. There was an older screw there, and he would then start to tell you about I was here. The respect that he had for the hunger strike has really surprised me. And they would lock me up at night, and you'd be in the block on your own. That was some impact. Like, it had some impact on me, because you could nearly hear the ghosts of all our comrades walking through the cells at night.
Frankie, did you find the war for the inside was harder when you were out or outside?
Say that again?
Did you find the war, was it harder when you were inside or when you were rolling into service?
Just a continuation of war.
Just the same.
Because as soon as you hit prison, the first place you go, right, who's in charge of the escape committee? Right, that's it, we have to get out. What do we need? We need guns, right, we need explosives, right, whatever we need to get out, we have to get out.
So it's the same mindset.
Your same mindset, exactly. So Frankie Quinn talked about it. Frankie Quinn talked about when he died in hunger strike, he says, I have no gun in here. All I have is my free will. And I'm going to withdraw my free will from you. And he died in hunger strike. And that's all you can do when you're in jail. But it's a powerful thing to take that decision. To continue the revolution in such a way. And there's nothing as respectable as to give your life for your friends and your comrades as those men did. And there's an awful lot of other orders. So you just continue the war. And you influence people, you educated people, you took part in debates, discussions. Funny even the like of this here where you might find a shyness or a holding back and not wanting to talk in public and all. Long cash and places like that would change you because you'll be sitting in front of people, maybe 20 people of a younger age, and they'll be looking up at you for guidance. They'll be looking and say, well, what do we do next? Like, so you develop certain skills, and I think once you've got it in here, it doesn't matter where you're standing or where you're talking, because you're giving the message.
See, what you were saying, that difference with the hospital wing, and I went to Robben Island where Mandela ended, and you had that feeling, and I was fortunate enough to get the tour guide who took us was a prisoner previously, and that feeling he explained just pretty much as you nailed it there. Just, there was an eeriness and an unknowing.
Well, I went back on a tour with local people and into the hospital wing and couldn't handle it at all.
Really?
I had to go out, yeah, couldn't deal with it. And I'm not a bit ashamed to say that that's life. We're human. And I'm glad we're human. And I'm glad we have the ability to do all that, because if some of the most human people I have ever met were deeply involved in this conflict, who didn't like what they had to do, let me tell you, but they done it. And they took no joy in it. There's something that had to be done. Simple as that. There's one there and it's called Hunger. And it ties in again the internationalism of this poem and the way it ties in the Palestinian struggle and other struggles. If you've got a book, you can read it later on. But we'll go through this one here now. And there's a lot in it, but there's an awful lot in it. But again, you can dissect it yourselves. It's called Hunger. Small precious gift beneath rubble's volume, hidden within crusty darkness, longing for light. It grows with intense, penetrating pureness. Curl protected small foot, dissolved with security of solid foundation, anchored forever, wanting home. Hunger burns within sands, crystallized fusion, creates wondrous stone, viewed by none who dare open wounds, entwined in the belly of an ocean of pain. Swallowed salt water lives fall on a May day, hovering above still living Gaza Strip. Ever so patiently open to reveal the precious poet who died to free the immortal soul, sought after by all who proclaim righteousness inside the Zionist tomb, where sleep becomes an oyster catcher's nightmare, locked in a H-block cell. Intertwined through all that is the Palestinian hunger strike of May 3 years ago, or 3 or 4 years ago. And the crystallized sands is what makes inside of an oyster, is what makes a pearl. And the pearl is Sands himself and his poetry. But also the salt water is at the time they were feeding the Palestinian hunger strikers salt water in spoonfuls of salt water during that day, while the kids were blew up on the beach in Gaza, also spread by salt water. So entwined in this is a massive amount of stuff in that poem. And the Gaza Strip and the Zionist tomb being the jail, and those who proclaim the righteousness inside of Zionist tomb, where the Palestinians were also trying to claim that international recognition that they can't get and couldn't get, and still haven't got, that Bobby Sands was able to get. Like they were able to get, the Russians closed down the ports, they closed down Iran, they've got streets named after them, where unfortunately the Palestinians can't get a similar anchor on it, but the anchor and an oyster is stuck to a rock by a small foot, believe it or not, and that small foot holds on to a rock to grim death. Well, that in itself is the Palestinians trying to hold on to their land, being prized off by the Zionists again. So there was an awful lot in that poem that links struggles internationally. And again, that's what's important in it. Now, if we go to one again, so we've been dealing with a lot of political poems, and one that's just arrived at me here is oppression. And if you want to get into more personal and how do you feel sometimes with solitary confinement, with comrades getting killed, family getting killed, analysing war and all the things that go through it, and even your own life. What we've left out of all this, you see, is we're human as well, and we have our own lives and our loves and our families and our children, and you give all that up. Like any time I went to jail, whatever relationship I was in, I just said, look, you better go. You didn't sign up for this, I did. So away you go and have your life, and that's fine. The first time I went to Port Leash, I had a wife and a son, and within 2 weeks I said, you're beautiful guys, go and have your life, because you can't wait on me. And we're the best of friends, and me and my sons like that, there's no problem. And the second time I had to do the same. That's just the way. There's no point in saying you have to suffer as well. So one, it's called oppression. Scream. Is this life a fucking dream? My body, it's being crushed. Open up, take out this burning wrath. My arms are open wide. Come give me love and fuck the pride. I need to see and feel my face, not this hard stone front so blunt. Come give me love, and in return, I'll give you mine. So you have that aspect of life as well, where you, or the cruelty of jail sometimes comes out, and when you're sitting in cells and you hear somebody next door crying their eyes out, their wife's after leaving them, or somebody died at home and they can't get out, then the cruelty, and the human aspect of it comes into play. But when you're in a homogeneous society like that, and you have a command structure and you've got a belief in it, everybody rallied around these people and tried to help them. But I've experienced holding people up when they put a rope around their neck. I remember being in a cell in Sligo. We were caught impersonating votes for Joe Doherty, who stood for TD in County Sligo in 1981. And I remember being in cells for 2 or 3 days in Sligo station. And there was a young, ordinary criminal lad next door in the cell. And you'd know by him that he was mentally in trouble, like, and the guards came down and gave us our dinner, but they gave us it on Delft plates. And I remember saying to the cops, like, you shouldn't be giving that lad's not in a good place. Like. So in the middle of the night, anyway, I got up to relieve myself through the time. The feet were sticking on the ground again, and I couldn't figure out what it was. But it was all the blood. He had cut his wrists, and the cells were tilted, and the blood had run down into my cell as well, and the wee lad was dead. Again, the establishment didn't care. He was just a working class kid with mental problems. And they didn't care, they just guarded him out. But the point I'm making is they even knew by giving him a Delft plate, they were giving him the tools to do it with, So the human aspect and the human suffering of all this comes into play as well. So there's another one I want to read here. Any more questions on any others? Like this one again, relatively new, dealing with stuff that we all see within the last couple of years. It's called Refugees. Does anybody know who Alan Kurdi is? Right. Does anybody remember the wee lad that was laying on the beach? With the sand in his eyes and his face? That's who Alan Kurdi was. And I'm not saying that to embarrass anybody or anything, just what I'm saying is how easy we forget and how quick we forget things. Where the media can emotionally draw us into something and then just snap it off like that. Dancing ghosts catch the steps of Alan Kurdi. Perform where giants pull levers of steel. As they glide on the winged edge of a stage, people lie with empty sockets on tables of marble, colourless pallets. Hollow shapes create scenes of tragic loss on crimson waves, splash blood dried on small faces, alone in Mount Jinjai. Reaching for hope where only drones see bodies broken, where oil-soaked shapes make patchwork quilts, clouds stain deep in sands of nomadic tribes. Children float past bloated, laughing with gulps of salt baked on their lips, with pain creating hopeless corpse rigid beside a beach ball. Beach ball's rainbowed surface flat, half blurred on soft, cushioned footprints where babies play and pass through each other's dreams. Innocents crushed by crowds rushing for shrouds to hide the flag, ragged and torn to shreds on razor coils adorned with sharp US dollars dangling from every fence. Where no borders welcome those acting out the play, directed by the heartless who hold a skull aloft on Broadway. So, and that again brings the whole international aspect into it.
Can I ask Frankie,
Yes.
what was the experience when you've heard someone else reciting your poems?
I haven't.
I've never heard someone
I don't think.
Big bar.
Thank you, James.
I don't think.
You've got great reviews for I've been reading back home anyhow, Frankie, you know, what I've seen, you know.
The book's doing well.
Because it's so from the heart, the way you explain it, and every word is an experience. But for someone else to be reciting it must be strange for you. If you
I know what you mean, and I must. Sometimes I would read it aloud to. I reckon you should do that to get the right rhythm of it, and so if it sounds good as well. But sometimes then I tend to take on board some of the work that I do now. I work with the community. I have a program called AILU, which is escape. AILU comes from the Irish word escape, but it's from Bobby Sands' poem, Escape of the Mind. So now I work with a community project in Tyrone, and it's funded by the International Fund for Ireland, and we help people with mental difficulties, we help people with PTSD, alcohol problems, drug problems, put people back to work, get people employment, give people education programs, art programs, writing programs, all that type of stuff. And people, cross-generational PTSD we would see a lot of. And sometimes people, and this one would be personal to an individual that I've been working with, and I'll just read it and you can see what it means itself. It's called Door Jam. Door jammed, stroked hair, awakened voices, patched quilt, pulled tightly, protected from sweaty hands on cold door handle, pushed down, trembling child alone on tiled floor. Breath creeps beneath as drafts sneakingly entice drunken smiles, patriotic songs drifting along the hall, echoing off walls studded with secrets. She craves reassuring hugs that banish doubt. Stoic terror, dreams of emptiness, escape in the dark. She bottles her helplessness, puts it up high on a shelf, beyond reach. Pain pulls tears from a child's night fear. A woman now, she holds her knees tightly, pressed, curled in a bed, still struggling to close the door. The voices burst through her open sores, calling her back to the pit of her stomach, churning with sickness, holding her arms wide for approval from those accusing eyes. You're dreaming. Her story has no happy ending. Creased, harshness, pressed lines appear where memories condemn forgiveness. And that's a powerful poem depicting all sorts of, you can, if you took that and read it, you can feel the abuse in it, you can feel the fear of a young woman from past childhood experiences. And what would give me, it gives me the ultimate satisfaction is helping somebody to become strong from something like that.
See, just to open it up into a discussion about the coverage, it was referred to, it's been really, the book's been really well received and had a lot of good publicity.
Yeah.
But that's also led into wider interviews that you've done in the media in the last few weeks about the situation, political situation now, and where republicanism is at now, because obviously you're still a political activist with 1916 societies, campaigning for an all-Ireland referendum in Irish reunification. So just give us a sense of, because a lot of the poems there are talking about that period of war, revolution, imprisonment, but also referencing Palestine and other international revolutionary movements.
Mhm.
But we're in a very different world now than we were in the 70s and 80s.
Yeah.
But in saying that, we see with Brexit that the whole sort of British constitutional settlement is completely up in the air. So in that context, where is Irish republicanism? And maybe more importantly, for your background and perspective, where is revolutionary republicanism?
Well, particularly the revolutionary republicanism, I think it's took a bit of a battering. It's starting to reform itself, I think, because what's seen as reformist or conformist republicanism has certainly taken centre stage, and again it's got involved in electoralism and possibly been overcome by power and overcome by the manipulation of the democratic process, really, which doesn't exist in both parts of Ireland. You know what I mean? There's no democracy in it. So from the aspect of ourselves as revolutionary republicans, we were formed the 1916 societies, the Pat O'Donnell Socialist Republican Forum, connections with yourselves over here, and I think the left-wing socialist element of republicanism is becoming stronger. It's becoming stronger again and starting to align itself again, and possibly use different tactics to try and pursue our aims. There's Sinn Féin and that who are left with their electoral strategy, which has, in my opinion, it's failed, and you're at a stage now where it's possibly on a downward spiral. Because take Tyrone, for example, and other parts of the north, I think there's 7 independent councillors in Derry. We stood 3 councillors. The 1916 societies didn't stand, but we're members of societies, and we would encourage them to stand, but we don't stand as a body. But we encourage independents to stand, and we would support them. There was Barry Monteith got elected in Dungannon. Dan Kerr got elected, which is a cousin of Paul's here, got elected in the Coal Island district. John McCluskey got elected in Fermanagh. Dan O'Donnelly in Derry, Gaggs in Derry. You've lots of independent Republicans who've got a left-wing socialist perspective on it, really. And then in the middle of that, you have other Republicans who feel they can possibly achieve something through military struggle. Now I'm not here to criticise those individuals. There's some good people involved in that, of that I have no doubt. But it's just my opinion that armed struggle cannot achieve anything at this present time. And particularly those words that I'm saying, at present, armed struggle can't achieve it. So the way we would look at things is you look at them pure tactically. And tactics at the moment dictate that that's not the way to achieve freedom. Now what is left at all open is Brexit stuff. And for example, Scotland gaining its independence could springboard Ireland into getting its independence as well, because once Scotland breaks away, that's the end of the breakup of the Union, and possibly the beginning of the Union breaking up, which can have a massive impact on us. The 1916 Societies is it's an organisation that's involved in exploiting the undemocratic nature of both states. We will see both states as written, by the way. Every single economist, bar one who's an official unionist, will agree, because people said to us for years, it's the economy, foolish, it's the economy. What's the old saying? It's the economy that's relevant, which is fair enough, and that is true. Well, every single economist, bar one who's a unionist, will say that one island and a united Ireland, economically and politically, is the only way forward for Ireland. So people talk about when things were good in the south, we could unite Ireland. Well, the Celtic Terrier was roaring at the border. Nobody talked about Irish unity. They said the time's not right. The economy's on its knees. You have hundreds and hundreds of homeless people and living in Dublin. There's children dying in Dublin on the streets, the same as Belfast and everywhere else. Nobody's calling for unity again. So what could bring unity about? We could be saying thanks very much, Boris. Boris could help us on our way here. So that's where we would see it at present. It's a very volatile time. There's no doubt about it. And events can change all our activism. Events can change, and we have to shift and move and strategically plan for what we do next. But to sit on one stoic sort of a way and say this is the only way forward, you can't do that. Because when a principle, if something becomes a principle, you get wedded to it, and you're not going to achieve. You can't achieve your goal because you're wedded to a principle. It needs to be a tactic, hard and all as that may be. You change your tactics and move and change your tactics again and change tack all the time.
Do you feel betrayed by Sinn Féin after everything that you went through for the cause that you believed in, then as you done what you done, and now as you see what you see, is the cause that you fought for what you would have fought for 20, 30 years ago, is what they're fighting for now?
Well, I don't really feel betrayed by Sinn Féin, because Sinn Féin were manipulated by the enemy also, and I believe that the movement was infiltrated at a very, very high level. Of that there's no doubt, and there's absolutely no point in me getting into personalities or who done this or who done that. Now the party politics overtook the revolutionary concept, I believe, and the party became more important. That in itself damaged us, and it damaged the structure of the Republican movement. And what you had was the decommissioning of weapons, the decommissioning of an army, the decommissioning of all that didn't really matter. What mattered was the decommissioning of the mindset. And when you decommission the mind, nothing else matters. This is where the difficulty arose. So do I feel betrayed? No, I don't feel betrayed. I possibly feel, because I can't afford to do that. And there's no regrets about what we fought for. And would we fight for it again? Absolutely no doubt about that. Now you wouldn't make the same mistakes. And you will try not to make the same mistakes. But so you're betrayed by not betrayed, but outsmarted by the enemy, let's say. Aided and abetted by some of our own misguided people, and an infiltration at a high level within the movement, there's no doubt about it.
It's crazy to think that Scappaticci, the man that was there to find the informers, was one himself.
Okay,
but didn't that mean that the guys on the ground that were doing the fighting felt that's a futile?
But that, what you're after saying, think about what you're after saying, is exactly what the enemy want you to think. And that's exactly the way the enemy wanted us to think, that you cannot even trust the person sitting beside you then. But you can. And don't let them do that on us either, because there's lots and lots of people that you can trust. Those people, those lowlifes that became recruited and got involved and became double agents within the Republican movement, they've no place in any structure whatsoever. And go back in history, go right back in Ireland, any conflict. The Mossad's brilliant at it, the CIA is brilliant at it, British intelligence has always been fantastic at recruiting informers and manipulating the Irish or any colonial power that they were involved in. You know, so it's just another one nail in their armour that they would use. Now, is that possibly because the war went on for too long? Well, you can analyse it that way. The war went on for 30 years, which gave them, you know, how long does a game of hurling last, Paul?
70 minutes.
Game of hurling lasts 70 minutes, right? And that's Irishmen with sticks and a wee ball. 70 minutes of mayhem. A game of cricket lasts 3 weeks. Think about it. Strategically, they're always thinking way ahead of themselves. Or emotionally, we would get involved in it, and the Scottish are similar. Emotionally, we become involved in it, and we were so wedded to that cause that we don't even take time sometimes to strategically work out what's coming next, where they do. Like that picture of Rees Mogg lying up half asleep on the other end in the House of Commons. Do you see care of the working class people? He's made 6 million since the Brexit argument started. That's what he has made, 6 million. Do you think he cares about Brexit? That's the rich, obviously the rich and privileged, who are allowing, they have their money made. They don't want to be giving their money to Europe or anywhere else, but they couldn't care less about the working class people. And until people realise that, and we stand together, and that's why sectarianism again is blatantly being used by the enemy to divide us.
I don't think.
And you've seen it in the march the other day. I'm not condemning anybody for marching, everybody's got a right to march, but it's just when it gives them the opportunity to turn and say, look, there's the tags and the prods at it again. That's not what we're about. I'm an atheist. The modern day Irish republicanism comes from the influences of Wolfe Tone and the French Revolution. Protestant, Catholic in the centre. All of the Fenians, most of the Fenians were Protestants and Presbyterians. Presbyterians defended the Irish language when the Catholic Church didn't allow us to speak Irish. That's who defended it. There wasn't one priest died in the famine, or the Great Hunger, Gortamore. Not one priest. While our people were eating grass, the clergy was sitting with the aristocrats, supping wine and eating venison. And they were telling the people, don't steal the salmon out of the rivers. Rear your pig and pay the landlord. That's what it was about. So you know what I mean? You'll always get that state and church involvement where they're bringing the moral with their political. But it's morally wrong for you to fight against an enemy but it's morally right for them to
Sit down on.
bomb Palestine or Syria or anywhere else. So
But a lot of these people wouldn't be sitting where they were sitting if it wasn't for men like yourself. And I'm asking from a personal point of view, for you watching what's happening around you, is it the island that you fought for?
no, absolutely not. No, absolutely not, because we didn't win. It's not over. Jesus, I'm not even half started. I'm coming up to near the end. Doesn't matter till my last breath. That's what it'll be. It'll be a struggle and it'll be a fight for freedom. But what we need to do is exploit every situation. So Brexit's here now. We need to exploit it as best we can to bring about a change. But you see, the enemy's sitting in there as well, and they'll be trying to exploit other Republicans who have a different idea, which could be setting your cause backwards. That's all I'm saying. Now, there's an argument to be made that the marches in Scotland the other day and as the ones today and tomorrow, and it just gives them the authorities, so to speak, the opportunity to say what they said in Ireland for years. We're in here keeping these two foreign factions apart. And that's all it's about, sectarian conflict. No, it's not. It's not about that. And we need to get it away from the anathema of sectarianism, because it destroys us.
I mean, there isn't any doubt that sectarianism and anti-Irish racism are a huge problem in Scottish society, and have been for a long time. And I won't say who he is, but a leading sort of Sinn Féin politician used to come over here and half jokingly because there was a bit of truth in it, say, I keep saying to people, you need to come to Scotland for a good dose of sectarianism before you go back to Belfast. And people used to laugh because there was a bit of truth in it. And we can see that, and we can also see the manipulation, because for republicanism to make inroads politically in Scotland, it has to be making some sort of sense in terms of a national question.
Yeah.
And we can see the national question moving front and centre again in Scotland and in Ireland because of the Brexit. So you've got the UK state at its weakest point, and what happens? We have sectarianism on the rise again.
No, and why?
Now, it doesn't matter who we blame for that.
Yeah.
The truth of the matter is that the state are manipulating that,
That's right.
and anybody with an ounce of sense in taking a step back can see that. And it's important, I think, for people who've been involved in republicanism like yourself, that we do say that actually sectarianism, racism has absolutely no place in republicanism.
No place whatsoever.
And if we're going to build within working class communities and make republicanism relevant to working class people, we have to make that clear from the outset. And that has definitely been muddied over the years, because there's a lot of what you would see on social media, or even you speak to people, that would go very sort of a thin end of the wedge to being Republican, to nationalist, to quite sectarian.
Yeah.
And we need to be drawing a very clear distinction between Republican politics and that type of stuff.
And that's when you analyse, when people say, well, are you a Republican? You know what I mean? Then you get into the whole argument of what type of Republican. There's only one Republican. There's only one type of Irish Republican. You know what I mean? That's the republicanism of Wolfe Tone, and that's the Republican of revolution. That's the Republican of equality, fraternity, Protestant, Catholic, and dissenter. That's the Republican taking our direction from the 1916 Proclamation. The 1916 Proclamation being one of the best left-wing socialist documents ever written. So that's where we take our direction from. And within the 1916 societies, which Jim and a lot of people in the room are involved in, that's where we take our direction from as well. That's our main document. And the way we try and exploit the situation now, which is only actually sloganism and tactics again, we say we want one Ireland, one vote, which is one question on one day about Irish unity. Here's a strange one for you. Why did you ask the Irish people? Would anyone ever think of that? Just ask the Irish people. Now, we have done surveys right across Ireland. There's upwards of 80% of the people will vote for Irish unity. But they're not going, so is it a democratic state? It's not a democratic state. So we use that angle to prise that open a wee bit, like the oyster shell again. They're trying to prise it open and say, yes, aren't Democrats. This is undemocratic. And if you had nothing to fear, why don't you ask the people? So we have had thousands and thousands and thousands of signatures collected, even in the boys in Scotland are there as well, for people who want a referendum on Irish unity. People said to us at the start, when we formed societies 10, 15 years ago, there's no mechanism, you'll never get doing it. Well, there's a referendum coming up in the 26 counties within the next year, which states all the Irish diaspora can vote for the new president. Now,
First time ever.
yes, so why not? There's our mechanism. So we come in and say, why not ask all the people of Ireland, the whole Irish diaspora, to vote for Irish unity? You know, so it gives, again, if you're talking about strategy, you can't back anybody in the corner. No matter who's in this room, if they're backed in the corner, you're going to come out fighting. or you're going to then curl up into the corner and actually go no road for no movement. So you always kind of have to leave the door open. And I believe that's leaving the door open. That the Brits themselves can decide and say, okay, here's a way out. We want out and ask them, give them the referendum. That's when we need to have the work done, the working class politics that we profess and we go out and we work on every single day. Then when you present yourself with a referendum, people say, well, these are the people that work within the community. These are the people that work in the boxing club. These are the people that helped our children. These are the people that are Republican socialists. So let's vote for unity. You win your struggle and you win your argument then. You know, and the same in Scotland, and I know it's hard for some Republicans sometimes to support the SNP and the whole ideology that they're involved in. But again, you're going to have to come down sometimes, strategize about that and say, well, we'll have to pick our time to say yes. Similar to us about the border poll. People say to us, what's the difference in you and Sinn Féin's border poll? The border poll is a triple lock system that Sinn Féin signed up for. Beyond no illusion, it's impossible to move it. For one, the Secretary of State can only call the referendum. That's the only person can call the border poll. Number two, they set the parameters for that border poll, which means they tell you who votes, they tell you who the question is, and if you watch the situation at present with Brexit, the way hundreds and hundreds of people went and got Irish passports, one way they could frame the question is, the border poll, anybody who doesn't hold a British passport can't vote in the north. Now, wouldn't that suit them? Because we all hold Irish passports. Now, that would suit them lovely. Or they might turn around and say, anybody who has a prison record can't vote. By the way, which would eliminate upwards of 25,000 people in the north who spent time in prison. So anyway, that's the second part of it. And the third part, even if you get past them, it has to go through the Houses of Parliament to get ratified. So that ain't happening. You know, so that's your problem with the border poll. But however, so strategically, when we were asked that in the 1916 societies, then have to take a look at that, say how do we get around that? So if and when, quite possibly is, a border poll could be the mechanism that achieves it also. So if we're asked that question, what do you do about a border poll? What we'll say to people is we don't agree with the border poll. It's usurping the sovereignty of the Irish people yet again. It's undemocratic. But if there's a border poll called tomorrow morning, we're calling every single one of us to vote yes. Because you would have to. It'll be harry-carry to do anything else, to turn in and say, well, don't be voting for Irish unity. That goes right back to people not even having a vote pre-1969, pre-1964, the disturbances in the Falls Road War. In the 1972, it was boycott elections, because I remember painting it on the walls. You remember the famous painting at the bottom of Listener Hall about boycotting the elections. But you went round, and we found that very, very difficult. I was only a kid, but I remember going round the doors and saying to people, don't vote. I said, what? Get away from my door. People died for a vote. Problem. Now there's another split. There's a Republican group in the north who tried that the last council election. I think it lasted about 2 hours till they realised the people were saying, what? You're telling people not to get away, you can't do that. So you'll not be doing that. That'll be suicidal. So what we'll be saying is vote yes. Even if it creates the statistics that they can't hide from. Now, also part of our strategy there is that we're going to do the same as the Caledonians. We're going to hold a referendum anyway. We're going to get GAA clubs, small parish halls right across Ireland on one day with one question and hold our own referendum and fucking declare independence. Now that leaves them in an awful bad situation. You know what I mean? Now you're not declaring it that the GPO at the point of a 303 stolen from the Brits. What you're saying is that the people have talked to you, the people have spoken, similar to the Caledonian. Now that can do one of two things. They accept that or put you in conflict with the state, and where are you then? The people in conflict with the state, not a section of the people. The people of 70 to 80% of the people that have voted yes are saying, so my vote doesn't matter. Is this a democratic state? You have arisen people, strategically.
Frankie, thanks very much.
Some for sale.
Owen, lock the door. This is finished. Nobody leaves till we buy a book. Frankie,
That fun.
great to have you back in Scotland.
Cheers, Frankie.
Thank you very much.